Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and hello. Welcome to the 5 Before 5 podcast, where every week I will share 5 insights and pieces of wisdom drawn from both the Western tradition and the beautiful evergreen wisdom of Islam. This week we are going to be talking about trees. One of the skills I've always sought to build in my students is metaphorical intelligence, or the ability to think in metaphors. This is a key trait shared by all of my most intelligent friends. To build this skill, I frequently ask my high schoolers seemingly simple questions that often lead to profound discussions, which restore my faith in this upcoming generation. This week's question was, what can we learn from trees? Here were some of their ideas. Trees teach us to be firmly rooted and to hold our ground, to share the light, to be simultaneously independent and part of a community, to purify the harmful, carbon dioxide, and make it beneficial, oxygen, to learn patience and perseverance, to provide shade and ask nothing in return, to branch out and to get out of our comfort zones. A Greek proverb says, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in." The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "If any one of you has a sapling in his hand and the day of resurrection arrives, he should still plant it." If we are encouraged to plant trees even when our world is ending, imagine how important it is to appreciate them while we are still here. Clearly, we have much to learn from our arboreal cousins. Here are 5 ideas. First, our ultimate destination. The first and undoubtedly the most important thing that trees can teach us is where we are ultimately going. In Surah Rum 30:19, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ وَيُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا وَكَذَلِكَ تُخْرَجُونَ. He brings the living out of the dead, and brings the dead out of the living, and brings to life the earth after its lifelessness, and thus will you be brought out. Here we are reminded that Allah is Al-Muhyi, the giver of life, and Al-Mumit, the bringer of death. And in case the meaning was not clear, Allah then explicitly draws our attention to how He brings life to the dead earth every spring. Anyone who has been on a walk over the past couple of weeks can testify to the miracle of spring. Finally, the kicker is that just like the dead trees, we too will be brought forth from our graves and resurrected to stand before Allah on the Day of Judgment. By looking deeply at the life cycle of a tree, we can understand so much about our lives, whether we are saplings just taking root in our youth, flourishing oaks in the flush of our careers, or beautiful maples sharing the fall foliage of our wisdom as adults. We are all quickly approaching our winter. But, to misquote George R.R. Martin, we must never forget, spring is coming. We will soon be brought back to life to stand before Allah and answer how we spent our time as trees in this world. Number 2, how can we judge ourselves less harshly? I read a post on Maria Popova's fantastic, intellectually titillating The Marginalian that floored me with its profound insight into what we can learn from trees. She quotes an answer Ram Dass gave her when asked how we can learn to judge ourselves less harshly. He writes, "Part of it is observing oneself more impersonally. When you go out into the woods and you look at the trees, you see all these different trees, and some of them are bent, and some of them are straight, and some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. And you look at the trees and you allow it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, and so it turned out that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all that. And you're constantly saying, you're too this, or I'm too this. That judging mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. We are all so hard on ourselves. What's more, we are very judgy of our fellow humans. Particularly within the minority Muslim community here in the States, we need to adopt a mindset of acceptance towards our brothers and sisters who are seeking to serve the deen. We need to band together and support one another, as so many other minority communities already do. Infighting and egos are holding us back. We need to turn our brothers and sisters into trees and appreciate them just the way they are. Third, the parable of the good tree. The most memorable place that trees show up in the Quran is in Surah Ibrahim 14:24. Do you not see how Allah strikes the parable of the kalima tayyiba, the noble words? It resembles the healthy tree, with roots firmly planted and branches reaching the sky. The noble words mentioned in this verse refer to the kalima tayyiba, in other words, the testimony of faith. La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. This verse means that those who are firmly rooted in Islam will be able to withstand the tempests of this world. It reminds us that our true strength emanates from our roots. When these are strong, our branches will mimic them and extend skyward, basking in the nur of Allah. The verse also teaches us that strength isn't about power, it's about flexibility. The motto of a karate dojo explains this concept thus: a strong wind may topple the sturdy oak, but the willow bends and lets the wind pass through. I guess Bill Belichick was really onto something when he said that his aim for the Patriots defense was to let it bend, but not break. Number 4, stopping by woods on a snowy afternoon at Borderland State Park. There are so many poems and books that use trees as a metaphor for us to understand ourselves better. Everyone should reread The Lorax, The Giving Tree, and The Road Not Taken. The depth of the messages in these classics will take root in your soul. One of my favorite tree poems is Robert Frost's masterpiece, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. I had to memorize it in middle school, and I still remember it to this day. I recorded myself reciting the poem on one of the only remotely snowy days this winter, when I was out on a walk at Borderland State Park in Easton, Massachusetts. And you can see my recording of that video on the 5B45 post on Substack. My main takeaway from this poem is that the quality that sets humans apart from the horses of this world is that we are able to appreciate beauty for its own sake. There was no tangible reason for the man to stop by the woods to watch the snow or for me to go on a walk during bad weather, but we did it anyways because it made our hearts come alive. Often we become so caught up in our miles to go before we sleep that we lose balance and forget to breathe and appreciate nature. The next time you are feeling overwhelmed, fire up all trails and head off on a walk in the woods. Another great book, by the way. Finally, number 5, Wood Wide Web and Sky Gardens. 2 of the most mind-blowing podcast episodes I have ever heard were both from Radiolab on the topic of trees. One was called From Tree to Shining Tree, and the other, Forests on Forests. Here are the descriptions. From tree to shining tree. A forest can feel like a place of great stillness and quiet, but if you dig a little deeper, there's a hidden world beneath your feet as busy and as complicated as a city at rush hour. In this story, a dog introduces us to a strange creature that burrows beneath forests, building an underground network where deals are made and lives are saved and lost in a complex web of friendships, rivalries, and business relations. It's a network that scientists are only just beginning to untangle and map. And it's not only turning our understanding of forests upside down, it's leading some researchers to rethink what it means to be intelligent. In the other podcast, Forests on Forests. For much of history, tree canopies were pretty much completely ignored by science. It was as if researchers said collectively, it's just going to be empty up there, and we've got our hands full studying the trees down here, so why bother? But then, around the mid-1980s, a few ecologists around the world got curious and started making their way up into the treetops using any means necessary, ropes, cranes, hot air dirigibles, to document all they could find. It didn't take long for them to realize not only was the forest canopy not empty, it was absolutely filled to the brim with life. You've heard of tree houses? How about tree gardens? This week we journey up into the sky and discover forests above the forest. We learn about the secret powers of these sky gardens from ecologist Corina Mafune, and we follow Nalini Nadekarni as she makes groundbreaking discovery that changes how we understand what trees are capable of. Together, these two podcasts paint an incredible picture of how interconnected we all are and how influential the unseen world is. From tree to shining tree reveals how trees communicate with each other through an underground network of fungi, allowing them to share resources and respond to environmental stressors. Similarly, Forests on Forests highlights how forests are composed of countless individual trees and organisms that work together to create a thriving ecosystem. One of the key takeaways from both pieces is that by fostering a rich and varied mix of species and organisms, forests can better withstand disruptions and adapt to changing conditions. We can learn much from this by finding strength in the diversity of the many trees of our ummah. I often tell my students when they get bogged down on small details that they can't see the forest for the trees. I guess the above shows us that sometimes zeroing in on the trees can help us see the forest of our lives in a new light. And now for that exciting announcement. This Sunday, May 7th, 2023, I will be hosting an important and inshallah inspirational webinar. I've invited 3 Al-Noor families whose children have excelled in 2 areas. First, love of the deen and commitment to Islam. And second, academic success and worldly ambition. I will interview each family and attempt to tease out the decisions around tarbiyah and parenting that led to such well-rounded Muslim leaders. We will then open it up to questions and comments from the community to crowdsource ideas to help our children thrive, both here and hereafter. This event will also serve as the soft launch of my new passion project and company, 5 Before College. Inshallah, I will let you know all about what 5 Before College is all about. If you are able to attend the webinar, you can find the details at the bottom of my Substack. It is going to be on Zoom on Sunday, May 7th from 8 to 9:15 p.m. I hope to see you all there. Jazakallahu khair. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. واستغفرك وأتوب إليك